Here's an outbound campaign that I built for SheetWhiz. SheetWhiz is a Google Sheets add-on that allows you to trace precedents, bring a lot of efficient keyboard shortcuts into Google Sheets. It's really designed for folks that are in maybe strategic finance at tech firms that have to use Google Sheets for financial modeling. And these people might have gotten used to keyboard shortcuts and functionality to trace precedents in Excel when they were maybe working on Wall Street before moving to tech. So I used AI and automation, obviously this tool called Clay, which has quickly become one of my favorite tools to build these outbound campaigns at scale, right? So there's 279 messages that were built here. And if you look, it says, "Hi, Aaron. Here at Figma, you use Google Sheets, and I see that you've been in your current role for around 2 years. I'm curious, how have you been dealing with the lack of keyboard shortcuts and the precedent tracing feature in Sheets? When you were at Perilla Weinberg Partners, I assume you may have used an Excel add-on for it. What's your approach today?" And then if you go to another one, "Hi, Atheline. Sorry if I butchered your name. I hear at Angelus you use Google Sheets, and I see that you've been in your current role for around 8 months. I'm curious, how have you been dealing with the lack of keyboard shortcuts and the precedent tracing feature in Sheets? When you were at Deloitte, I assume you may have used an Excel add-on for it. What's your approach today?" And so on and so forth. So you can see that there's parts of it that are sort of static and don't change from person to person. And then there's parts of it that do change that make it personalized and targeted, right? And so some of the ones that jump out is obviously the first name, the company, um, and the duration that they've been in their current role. Here it's a little over a year, over 8 months or just over 2 years, whatever it is. And when you are at Macquarie Group. So this is, again, sort of a dynamic variable that varies by person. So how did I build this? Maybe a good place to start is to zoom out and actually look at how I thought about the strategy for the outbound, right? And so because this is a tool that primarily focuses on Google Sheets users, right? Not primarily, exclusively, right? And so I had to figure out a way to find folks that would still be building a lot of financial models, but now on Google Sheets instead of Excel, maybe. Or maybe they use both, right? But they now have to use Google Sheets. And it's probably pretty frustrating for them to try to build or audit a model on Google Sheets. So ex-bankers and people who used to build financial models on Excel, right? So they're used to all the sort of the productivity tools that they had in Excel, but can't find it in Google Sheets. They probably now work in tech since they're using Google Sheets, and they use it today, right, for financial analysis. And so the steps that I took was first I found people with a role strategic finance in US Tech Hub. So I think I searched. Clay has a cool feature where you can just find people based on their LinkedIn profile. So I looked for anyone with the title strategic finance in California, New York, Florida, and Illinois. And I think there were literally like thousands and thousands of people, but I limited my search just to 500. So if I remove this filter, right, there's 500 rows here. Then I think this was probably the most interesting part of this project, which was see if their company actually uses Google Mail, right? Because it'd be silly of me to send, hey, I think you use Google Sheets, but they actually don't. And so I had to figure out a way to see if they use Google Sheets. And the problem with figuring out whether a company uses Google Sheets or not is that that information is not public, right? And so the best proxy that I could think of was if their company uses Google Mail as their mail server, then the likelihood that they also use other Google Workspace tools like Sheets, Docs, Slides, that likelihood is probably pretty high. And so that's the proxy that I use. And whether a company uses Google Mail or not is public information, and it's easy to find if you know where to look. Then I also checked if they have any previous work experience in finance, so I can sort of name drop their previous company, and then check how long they've worked in their current role. And I also tried to find a coworker that they likely know, just to add another layer of personalization. And so, again, this is sort of the list of people, 500 people that have strategic finance across sort of U.S. tech hubs. And what I did was use a tool called SheetWhiz XML API to look up the DNS records for that domain. So if we look here, we know that they work at Figma, and we know that the company domain is figma.com. And so I got the API endpoint for SheetWhiz XML API and said, hey, for this given domain, figma.com, give me the DNS records for them for their mail exchange. And so you can see the domain here, figma.com, and you can see that they use Google Mail, right? And so that's a proxy again for checking whether they use Google Mail and by extension, Google Sheets. So if you look at a different person where they don't use Google Mail, go to DNS records and we can see that here they use, it's called mimecast.com. I have no idea what that is. Okay, yeah. So our solutions extend beyond email. So yeah, that might be like an email server provider. Um, so that's how I found a list of companies that use Google Mail, and by extension, hopefully they use Google Sheets. And I just filtered by that, right? Because I don't want to send an email that says, hey, you probably use Google Sheets to people that I'm not sure actually use Google Sheets. And so, do we use Google? Let's check. Perfect. So out of 500, we got 279 rows. Obviously, this would be, again, thousands of rows if I actually expanded my sort of search universe. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I just selected 500 random accounts. I then cleaned up their company name by feeding it to AI. So anything like, let's see, there was a company that had formerly known as X or something else, right? In parentheses, right? And things like that, you don't want to necessarily include in an email because it screams that a bot wrote it, right? And so you want to clean that up. Same thing with first name. Sometimes folks go by a different name and they might have their real name in parentheses, right? And so again, that needed some cleanup to make sure that we don't mess up the very first line that says, hi, Joe. And then I enriched these folks using a Clay integration and was able to pull all of their work experiences, including the current one, but going back to when they first started working, right? So if you look, strategic finance at Boomi, William Blair, investment banking summer analyst, and so on and so forth. And then I ran a series of steps to either see if they explicitly said they did investment banking, because that's a very clear signal that they probably use the tool like SheetWhiz in Excel. And so this is that column here. I just literally searched for the term investment bank or investment banking. And then if I couldn't find anyone, then I went to the next step where I asked AI, hey, any of these companies in their experiences section, are they an investment bank, or are they known for potentially doing a lot of financial analyses? And if I couldn't find that, then I went to ask AI, hey, do any of these companies seem like traditional finance companies where one might do a lot of financial analysis, right? And that's the result that you get. For this column, I played around with the prompt and it just wasn't quite giving me, it was like 95% good. So you see companies like Amazon or Marley Spoon. But then you also have, let's see, some good ones like Accenture, right? But anyways, because I couldn't fully trust the results of this AI prompt, I actually fed these companies back to AI itself and asked it to double check its work. So I asked, hey, is Amazon actually a traditionally or known as a traditional financial company, right? And AI checked its own work and said, no, false, it's not. So then in that case, I don't want to name drop Amazon because that would look really foolish. To say, hey, like I think you did a lot of financial modeling at Amazon, because that could be true, but I don't have a high conviction that that is the case. So then you get sort of all the merged experiences from where you got hits across these different columns, right? Um, and then I also found other people who work in strategic finance at their company. Again, to name drop their colleague. And then I also looked at when did they start work and how long has it been in terms of days? Because this information I fed back to AI to um, turn it into sort of a duration that you would use in everyday language, right? So instead of saying, I see that you've been in your current role for 687 days, I had AI turn that into around 2 years. Right? So about a year and a half a year and a half, around 8 months, just over a year, a little over a year, around a year and a half, over 2 years, about 7 months, almost 2 years, right? Just makes it sound a lot more natural and makes it sound like a human wrote it. Lastly, got the tenured coworker's name, cleaned that up again. And then I put them into each of these lines, feeding it variables. And again, sort of the output that you get is what you saw earlier at the start of the video. Hi, Aaron. Here at Figma, you use Google Sheets, and I see that you've been in your current role for around 2 years. I'm curious, how have you been dealing with the lack of keyboard shortcuts and the precedent tracing feature in Sheets? When you were at Perella Weinberg Partners, I assume you may have used an Excel add-on for it. What's your approach today? So that's the first message, right? Really soft, just kind of asking them, hey, I think you might have this problem. And if you do, how are you dealing with it today, right? And depending on their answer, it kind of leaves a nice segue to potentially introduce our solution if they indeed have this problem and they haven't quite figured out a good enough solution for it. And then for the folks where we were able to find a tenured coworker, you might want to follow up and say, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while, but is Eric Lee a better person to reach out to discuss this, right? Just to remind them that, we've done our research and we know who else is sort of on their team, and maybe, yeah, they are the sort of a better person to talk to. So hopefully you found this useful, if you're thinking about outbound and different ways to really identify your target customers. I'm always happy to kind of jam on that and strategize. So let me know. And if you have any questions, definitely let me know in the comments. Thanks.